NBC is catching criticism after they tried to hide Nick Bosa, the 49ers star, wearing a Make America Great Again hat after winning on Sunday. He went to the broadcast while they were interviewing Brock Purdy. He flashed his MAGA hat. He's a big Trump guy. The Bosas love Donald Trump just like millions of other Americans. NBC then went to Twitter and deceptively edited the video so people would not know this had happened. Then they deleted the video, then they reposted the video, then they deleted it again, and then finally they shared the full video. This right here is why people don't trust the media. He's simply wearing a hat showing support for Donald Trump, and NBC went online and cut it so people would not know that Nick Bosa liked Trump. It's absolutely shameful, and this right here is a golden example of why many in the media are absolute scum and why the American public, for good reason, does not trust them.
Some discussion, you had a hat on that was not the hat you're currently wearing in the post-game. Why did you take that opportunity to make what would appear to be a political statement?
I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I think it's an important time.
Donald Trump and his connection to American football, it's undeniable, guys. And now that I think about it, he's also been getting a lot of love from different sports. Y'all remember when he showed up for the UFC, right?
Also with us tonight, 45, being ushered in by UFC CEO Dana White. Donald Trump is in the building, and the former president getting a standing ovation from the assembled masses here at UFC 302.
It's felt like one of those old school entrances on WWF or something. The crowd just goes electric whenever Trump comes in. And as far as we know, the UFC has allowed its fighters to support whoever they want to support. They're even free to say it right after their fights, which I guess has triggered many within the left because Trump is being hailed as the man. Because these are champions and fierce competitors that are showing him love. He's also received a lot of support from sports fans.
45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, in attendance tonight.
Now, I want to compare that to a campaign event of Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, you would think that since it's her campaign event, things would go smoothly. But no, she's getting booed and heckled off the stage by voters who don't agree with her. Now, I want you guys to notice what her supporters chant as she's challenged by some in the crowd. Check this out.
We are fighting for America's future. And we understand the opportunity we have before us to turn the page on the fear
They're chanting Kamala instead of USA, which represents this election cycle perfectly. Trump is out there talking about what he's willing to do for the country and for the American people. Kamala Harris, instead, she's using it as a platform to introduce herself and talk about her past rather than our future. Trump talks about sacrifice. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is talking about fear. And speaking of sacrifice, Nick Bosa, he is really going out on a limb here, showing his support for Donald Trump despite him knowing that the Bay Area is Kamala Harris's home court, or in this case, home field. In fact, many liberal fans of his team were not happy that he was picked second overall in the 2019 NFL draft, obviously because he's been vocal about his support for Trump. But it's not just him who's showing his support as publicly as this. You got Texas Tech kicker Reese Burkhardt. He celebrated a recent touchdown by showing his support for the former president. Right after the touchdown, Burkhardt lifted his jersey to show a Trump 2024 MAGA t-shirt underneath. The common denominator between these two isn't their football background. It's not even their shared support for Donald Trump. It's how they're now both being criticized for supporting the former president. But before we dig any deeper into that, I want you guys to imagine what would happen if someone wore a Kamala shirt or something similar to that. Do you think the mainstream media would be outraged? Because right now, the reaction to their support is negative. Many are now questioning the 49ers if they plan on imposing any punishment for their star defensive end. Now, again, I just want to remind you guys that he did not say a single word. He got up on live TV with a MAGA hat and pointed to it. it. The people who were there were all laughing and smiling as he did it. But the NFL supposedly has rules about this kind of thing. Now, according to Alex Simon of SF Gate, Bosa's MAGA hat violated the NFL rule, a rule that states that players are prohibited from wearing, displaying, or otherwise conveying personal messages, either in writing or illustration, unless such message has been approved in advance by the league office. Bosa's supposedly going to be facing a fine of around $11,255 since it's his first time violating this rule. Wow. Now, let's talk about Reese Burkhardt, who's also facing a lot of criticism after showing his support for the former president. The Texas Legislative Black Caucus has now taken notice. Their chairman, State Representative Ron Reynolds, released a statement about this incident. According to him, if we're removing DEI programs in the name of keeping politics out of education, then we cannot allow political messages to slip in selectively. This is about consistency and integrity in our commitment to education and fairness. Now, what do you guys think about that? With all the support for Donald Trump, I just can't help but to think of Governor Tim Walz, because they call him a coach, right? Well, here's JD Vance torching him for playing Madden with AOC. Watch.
I saw that I guess Governor Tim Walz did a live stream of a Madden football game, professional football game. Obviously not playing; they were playing video games. And he did it with AOC. And I guess the goal is to try to appeal to the young male vote by playing video games online with AOC. And I don't know who came up with that idea, but I guess afterwards, because Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, they always like to talk about Project 2025, and which, by the way, is a complete dishonest disgrace. Project 2025 has nothing to do with the Trump campaign, and it never has. But set that to the side. He was talking about playbooks and trying to connect that to Project 2025, and he said, yesterday AOC, she did very good. She ran a pick six. I think you don't run a pick six. You run the West Coast offense or the spread offense, or the 3-4, the 4-3. It made me realize that I think that even though they say Tim Walz was a college football coach, that I think I know more about football than Tim Walz. And it's appropriate because I think my running mate, Donald J. Trump, knows more about working at McDonald's than Kamala Harris does.
Tim Walz or somebody from his team has now deleted that embarrassing post on X. And if they can't even get a football term right, what else can they get wrong? Vice President Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on so many freaking policy decisions. This is because she's aware that not many voters are supportive of what she wants to do.
This administration has decided to vilify them and to trade on them for the sake of this president's medieval vanity project called a wall. Let me be very clear. I'm not going to vote for a wall under any circumstances, and I do support border security. And if we want to talk about that, let's do that.
Here is how Harris spoke about the border during last week's DNC.
After decades in law enforcement, I know the importance of safety and security, especially at our border. Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it. But Donald Trump believes a border deal would hurt his campaign. So he ordered his allies in Congress to kill the deal. Well, I refuse to play politics with our security. And here is my pledge to you. As president, I will bring back the bipartisan border security bill that he killed, and I will sign it into law.
But now that she's running for president, then it's okay for her to suddenly change her mind. She's done this with fracking, with the invasion of our border, and even copied or even stolen some of Donald Trump's key policies. But if we're talking about Trump, the topic is solely based on his words. Watch.
But again, can we talk about the issues that Americans care most about?
I'm talking about things that Donald Trump has said.
Yes.
If you have an issue with whether or not he's talking about the economy enough, that's between you and your running mate. I'm talking about things he has said this week.
Every single rally that he does, he talks about how he wants to unleash American energy so we can lower the cost of groceries. He talks about the fact that housing has become unaffordable. He talks about the wide open border, Jake. Kamala Harris and her allies, it's interesting. Kamala Harris and her media allies, and I would put CNN in this category. You guys seem to care.
I'll tell you that they wouldn't.
Well, they should watch your network more, because you guys seem to care more about Donald Trump's past than the future of the American people. We're running this campaign on making the American dream.
I'm specifically asking about how Donald Trump is going to be president in the future should he win, and then we're being told
he's going to pursue economic policies that lower the cost of groceries and make life more affordable again. He talks about it every single day on the campaign trail, and so do I. What you're talking about is an anonymously sourced story, or one guy
nothing anonymously sourced,
or who one guy who is a disgruntled employee.
I told
where
you 10 other
people pushed back against him and said that what he said was dishonest. So why don't we talk about the policy that's affecting American citizens and not what Donald Trump allegedly said, according to one guy who's pissed off because he got fired by Donald Trump?
And this is an argument that they hate talking about. They hate talking about what Trump is capable of doing for the American people. The point of changing leadership is to bring about change. That's the entire premise of this year's election. It's such a popular idea that even Kamala Harris, who's the current vice president, is also calling for change as well. But the point is that these officials who once worked with Trump are not happy about an individual that can't be controlled. One that's focused on making our lives better and keeping us away from war instead of running right into it. Yet, Jake Tapper, he's out here taking Trump's comments from different interviews and compiling them to make it seem as if he's saying all of these things at the same time, which, as JD Vance has called out, is damaging to a network's integrity. CNN has been doing its very best to try and look as if they're calling this right down the center. But Jake Tapper has, again, proven that they're mostly leaning to the left.
You're imputing things. You're taking words out of context. You're taking two separate conversations and pretending that they were made at the exact same time. So I'm rejecting the premise of your question. I frankly don't believe what you're saying about Donald Trump's words. If you'd like to put up a clip and actually put him in context, I think the American people would realize that Donald Trump is a hell of a lot more reasonable than the people like Liz Cheney who would like to lie us into war. Ask yourself a basic question about network integrity. You guys talked about the Russia hoax nonstop.
The FBI was investigating it.
And so you took the words of unnamed FBI agents and put them on your network as if they were the gospel truth. You did it again and again. A viewer of your network would have believed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin conspired in 2016.
No.
That was totally and preposterously false.
No.
Well, that's
what you just said is false. We covered an FBI investigation. I don't know why you want to talk about the FBI investigation.
You covered it in a way that gave credence to anonymous sources' accusations. You did it yourself. Your network did it, Jake.
It is clear as day that Jake Tapper and all these leftist members of mainstream liberal media treat Donald Trump and JD Vance a certain way. Never in our wildest dreams will we ever see them challenge Kamala Harris or Tim Walz like this. Now, I have to agree that within these past few weeks, the Harris-Walz campaign hasn't failed to get bad news each day. If you guys remember, the reception to her taking over was overwhelmingly positive. From CNN to MSNBC, everybody was glad to be rid of President Joe Biden. Harris was seen as the light of hope for the Democratic Party because, especially given their initial nominee's mental decline. But the minute that Tim Walz and Kamala Harris took on interviews, things quickly turned sour. That's because you can pretty much only fake it for so long. They faked it, but never made it. And the Los Angeles Times knows that the end is near for Kamala Harris's campaign. This is only made worse with their endorsement history. The newspaper has endorsed every Democratic presidential candidate since 2008, starting with former President Barack Obama. Now, what's really weird here is that they endorsed Kamala in her previous races. They endorsed her with the U.S. Senate, State Attorney General, and of course, they supported her when Joe Biden was running for president. So why are they suddenly changing their minds this close to the 2024 presidential election is the question. Patrick Soon-Shiong, the billionaire doctor who bought the newspaper back in 2018, didn't give much of an explanation as to why they're not endorsing Kamala Harris. He also didn't allow his staff to endorse Donald Trump. But the optics look really bad for the VP given that she lives in the Brentwood neighborhood of LA. She served as their attorney general and senator not too long ago, which means that she has a good history with them. Trump's team called it a humiliating blow to her campaign, adding that even her fellow Californians know that she's not up for the job. Unions have also steered away from Kamala Harris, with most of them choosing to endorse Donald Trump. Although she did get an endorsement that Donald Trump says is right up her alley. She got this just a few weeks ago. Watch.
It's no wonder that Kamala Harris was just officially endorsed by IRS agents. Do you believe it? That's when you'd say, I'd rather not have that endorsement. But I've been endorsed by virtually every police group in the entire nation. Every police group. Almost every sheriff's group, every police group, every one of them. We just had one, the Fraternal Order. We just had 400,000 policemen. That's the biggest of all the unions, and they endorsed me. And this is the first time in decades, just got endorsed by the rank and file members of the Teamsters, which I happen to think is amazing. That was a surprise. That's automatic for the Democrats, and they, now the bosses didn't endorse me, but they had a problem because they got 30% of the vote. We got actually 60 or 61% of the vote. Can you believe it? So the people that were in the 61, the people that want us, they said, well, how come you didn't endorse them? Why do you, they're just going to take a pass. But maybe that's okay. That's all right. We know where they stand, and that's good. Kamala Harris is the candidate of the tax collectors and the Washington bureaucrats. I am the candidate of the American worker, and I always will be. I always will be.
The distinction between the two could not have been any clearer. I also have to note that the Border Patrol Union is also backing up the former president. It's not a good look for the border czar, which now brings me to this hilarious idea that her campaign is now spreading out through mainstream media. They're now saying that men who don't vote for her can be considered as misogynist. She says it herself and pins the blame on black men. Watch.
Do you think some of the resistance of some men, black and white, is misogynist? And are you proud to see that most Americans, even being polled, have no problem supporting a woman at all? And I'm one that lived from Shirley to Kamala in terms of these campaigns.
And I have an emotional reaction to you raising the point of Shirley Chisholm, because it is on her broad shoulders that I stand, and so many of us stand. And we have come a long way, to your point, and on your specific point about including the fact that I have the support of countless black men who are in elected positions, including I'm just this afternoon and 2 church visits today with the mayor of Atlanta. That being said, I think that you are absolutely right, that there is this narrative about what kind of support we are receiving from black men that is just not panning out.
Welcome to Identity Politics, folks, where it doesn't matter if you can do the job or not. All that matters is the color of your skin or your gender. Straight up DEI stuff. Although many would argue that they're not voting for Trump simply because he's a man. All they're doing is voting for the same guy who's proven himself before in the White House. Unlike the vice president who's repeatedly shifted the blame of the issues that we're facing today to Donald Trump. Now, speaking of the blame game, you heard how Kamala Harris changed the question from black and white men to just black men, further pushing on the message that was started by former President Barack Obama, and others who feel the same way are now coming forward. Watch.
You said something is wrong with brothers who don't know how to support a sister.
Yeah. Full stop.
And Mordecai was man enough to know that in order for me to be a man, I got to know how to support a woman. Something is wrong with brothers who don't know how to support a sister. It was a sister that raised you. It was a sister that taught you how to read. It was a sister that taught you how to bathe yourself.
In the context of the vice president, were you trying to send a message?
That we've got to be able to vote, that misogyny is still real in our community. We've got to address it head on and not act like it doesn't exist. The reality is, if black men had voted, Stacey Abrams would be a governor. And so I think that we've got to do some real redress, that after racism, the biggest ill in America is sexism. And I think it's part of the responsibility of this generation to deal with it head on.
So what happened to free will? What happened to making your own choices in life? Because they can't accept the fact that more and more black men are steering away from the Democratic Party. This kind of reminds me that Donald Trump's campaign is going very well. However, it looks like they made a small misstep in the recent rally in Madison Square Garden. Because despite its success during this Madison Square Garden rally, more people are talking about a single joke. Now, I covered this in a previous video. You guys definitely need to check that one out after this one. As always, appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing. Check out this video next, and I'll see you guys next time.